The divorce papers hit the marble countertop with a sharp slap. Before I could even process what was happening, my husband grabbed his phone and dialed my father's number. He put it on speaker, making sure I heard every word. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his voice dripping with contempt, "your daughter is refusing to leave my house. Come collect your useless baggage before I have security drag her out to the curb. You've got 45 minutes. I didn't cry. I just stood there, watching the clock on the wall tick away. What my husband didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine, was that in exactly 45 minutes, his entire world would come crashing down. The trap my father had been setting for 3 years was finally about to snap shut. Let me take you back to the beginning. 3 years ago, I married Tyler Morrison in what everyone called the wedding of the year. I was Madison Hayes, the only daughter of Robert Hayes, founder and CEO of Hayes Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest biotech companies on the West Coast. My father had built his empire from nothing, and I was his pride and joy. Tyler was a senior marketing director at a mid-sized tech firm. Charming, ambitious, and incredibly handsome. My father had reservations from the start. "Sweetheart, I've seen men like him before," he warned me. "They see dollar signs, not daughters." But I was in love. Blindly, foolishly in love. As a wedding gift, my father gave us a stunning waterfront mansion in Seattle. 6 bedrooms, a private dock, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. It was worth close to $8 million. The deed was placed in both our names, a gesture of trust and goodwill toward his new son-in-law. For the first 2 years, everything seemed perfect. Tyler was attentive and loving. His mother, Patricia, who moved in with us 6 months after the wedding, was polite enough, though I always sensed she was calculating something behind her smiles. I continued working as a licensed architect, designing sustainable housing projects. I loved my career and wasn't about to give it up just because my family had money. That independence would later save me. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Sunday evening. We were finishing dinner when my phone rang. It was my father, and something in his voice made my blood run cold. "Madison, I need you to sit down." "Dad, what's wrong?" "The FDA rejected our new drug application, the one we've been working on for 7 years. It was supposed to be our biggest launch ever. Without it," he paused, and I heard him take a shaky breath. "The company is hemorrhaging money. Our stock has crashed. The board is calling for my resignation. I've had to liquidate most of my personal assets to keep the company afloat." "Dad, that can't be right. Hayes Pharmaceuticals was," he interrupted. "We were a giant. Now we're barely surviving. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I won't be able to help you anymore. I may lose everything, including your mother's house. I just wanted you to hear it from me first." The phone slipped from my fingers. My whole world was spinning. Tyler picked up the phone and listened. When he hung up, the look on his face wasn't concern or sympathy. It was something I couldn't quite identify at the time. Looking back, I know exactly what it was: opportunity. The next morning, everything changed. Patricia was the first to show her true colors. At breakfast, she looked at me with undisguised disgust. "So," she said, stirring her coffee slowly, "the princess finally falls off her throne. I always knew your family's money wouldn't last. New money never does." "Excuse me?" "You heard me." She leaned forward, her eyes cold. "Let's be clear about something, Madison. The only reason my son married you was because of your father's connections. Now that your family is worthless, you're just dead weight around his neck." I looked at Tyler, waiting for him to defend me. He just stared at his plate. "Tyler," I said, my voice shaking, "are you going to let her talk to me like this?" He finally looked up. "She's not wrong, Madison. Things are different now. You need to accept that." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. From that day forward, I became a stranger in my own home. Patricia treated me like a servant, criticizing everything I did. Tyler grew cold and distant, coming home late, barely speaking to me. The warmth we once shared evaporated like morning fog. I thought about telling my father what was happening, but he was already dealing with so much. The news was full of stories about Hayes Pharmaceuticals' collapse. Analysts were predicting bankruptcy. I couldn't burden him with my marital problems on top of everything else. So I endured. Silently, hoping things would get better. They didn't. About a month after my father's call, Tyler came home early one evening. He was unusually cheerful, almost excited. It immediately put me on edge. "Madison, we need to talk," he said, sitting down beside me on the couch. His voice was gentle, the way it used to be. "I've been thinking about your father's situation, and I want to help." I was stunned. "You do?" "Of course. He's family." Tyler took my hands in his. "I've been talking to some banker friends. With the equity in this house, we could take out a substantial loan. We could give your father the capital he needs to save his company." My heart swelled. Maybe I had misjudged him. Maybe he really did care. "But I need you to sign some paperwork," he continued. "Since the house is in both our names, the bank needs both signatures. It's just standard stuff, loan applications, authorization forms." He pulled out a thick stack of documents and placed them on the coffee table. Now, here's where my career saved me. As an architect, I deal with contracts and legal documents every single day. I know you never, ever sign anything without reading it thoroughly. "I'll need some time to go through these," I said. Something flickered in Tyler's eyes. Irritation? Impatience? He quickly masked it with a smile. "Of course, take your time, but the bank needs them by tomorrow morning. Your father's situation is urgent, isn't it? I'll read them tonight." That night, while Tyler thought I was asleep, I took the documents to my home office and went through every single page. Most of them were legitimate loan applications, just as he'd described. But buried in the middle, hidden between pages of dense legal text, was something that made my blood freeze. A quitclaim deed, transferring my entire ownership interest in the property to Tyler Morrison. If I had signed it, I would have given away my share of an $8 million mansion with a single stroke of my pen. My hands were shaking, but my mind was crystal clear. I understood everything now. Tyler and his mother weren't just ungrateful, they were thieves. They had been waiting for an opportunity to steal everything my father had given me, and they thought my family's misfortune was their golden ticket. I wanted to confront him immediately. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to demand answers, but something stopped me. A voice in my head, calm and calculating, whispered, "Not yet." If I confronted him now, he would just deny it. He would claim it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. He would destroy the evidence and try again with a different scheme. I needed more than a hidden document. I needed proof of intent. So I did something that would change everything. I downloaded a voice recording app on my phone. And the next morning, I set it to record. "Tyler, about those papers," I said at breakfast. "I looked them over, but there's so much legal jargon. Can you explain what each one is for?" He smiled, completely unsuspecting. "Sure, honey. This one's the loan application. This one authorizes the bank to assess the property value, and this one..." He picked up the quitclaim deed. "This is just a formality. It clarifies the ownership structure for the bank's records." "What do you mean?" "Well, technically, the house is jointly owned, right? But for the loan to go through smoothly, the bank prefers dealing with a single owner, so this temporarily transfers your share to me. Once the loan is processed and your father gets the money, we'll transfer it back. It's totally standard." I nodded slowly, keeping my face neutral while my phone recorded every lie. "And my father will definitely get the money from this?" "Absolutely. That's the whole point. We're doing this to save your father's company, remember?" I had him. I had his voice, on recording, admitting he was deceiving me about the nature of the document. But I needed more. I needed to document the full extent of their plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I became an actress. I pretended to be the naive, trusting wife they thought I was. I signed the loan applications, the legitimate ones, but I quietly substituted the quitclaim deed with a photocopy that had a slightly different date. I knew they wouldn't notice. They were too confident in their own cleverness. Meanwhile, I recorded everything, Patricia's rants about how they would finally be rid of the deadweight, Tyler's phone calls with his lawyer, discussing how to expedite the divorce after securing the property, conversations where they laughed about how stupid I was, how easy it would be to take everything. I compiled everything into a folder and sent copies to 3 different secure locations. Then I called my father. "Dad, I need to tell you something." When I finished explaining everything, there was a long silence. "Madison," my father finally said, "I'm proud of you. You did exactly the right thing. What do I do now?" "Now," he said, and I could hear the steel in his voice, "we end this. But we do it properly. We do it legally. and we make sure they never recover. What my father told me next left me speechless. The bankruptcy was fake. Hayes Pharmaceuticals wasn't in trouble. The FDA rejection was real, but it was a minor setback, not a catastrophe. My father had orchestrated the entire crisis, planting stories in the media, manipulating the stock price temporarily, all to test the character of my husband. I never trusted him, my father admitted. But I couldn't prove anything, so I created a situation where his true nature would reveal itself. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, sweetheart. I needed your reaction to be genuine. If you knew it was a test, you might have unconsciously tipped him off. I should have been angry. Part of me was. But mostly, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief and gratitude. My father had protected me in the only way he knew how. There's one more thing, I said. Tyler's going to file for divorce any day now. He thinks once the quitclaim deed is processed, he'll own the house outright. My father laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. Not because it was frightening, but because I knew that laugh. It was the laugh of a man who held all the cards. Let him file, my father said. Let him think he's won. When the time comes, I'll be there. The divorce papers came exactly as predicted. Tyler presented them with a smug smile, convinced he had outmaneuvered everyone. Sign them, he demanded. The lawyers have already verified the property transfer. This house is mine now. You get nothing. Patricia stood behind him, arms crossed, gloating. Finally, she sneered. Pack your bags and get out. Go crawl back to your bankrupt father. I'm not going anywhere, I said calmly. This is my house. Tyler laughed. Your house? Didn't you hear what I said? You signed over your share. I have the document right here. He waved a paper in my face. Signed, notarized, completely legal. Really? I smiled. Let's let a judge decide that. What followed was the most humiliating month of my life. I stayed in the mansion, refusing to leave, while Tyler and Patricia made my existence miserable. They cut off the utilities to my wing of the house. They changed the locks on common areas. They told neighbors I was mentally unstable. The initial court hearing was a disaster. Tyler's lawyer presented the quitclaim deed, and without my evidence being formally submitted, the judge granted Tyler temporary possession of the property. I could have submitted my recordings then. But my father advised patience. Let them get comfortable, he said. Let them think they've won completely. The higher they climb, the harder they'll fall. So I stayed. I slept in my home office, the one room they couldn't lock me out of. I showered at the gym. I ate takeout. And I waited. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Tyler had been drinking. He was celebrating his victory with some friends when he decided to make a phone call. To my father. On speakerphone. Mr. Hayes, he slurred, his voice loud and mocking. I'm calling to let you know your worthless daughter is still squatting in my house. I've tried being patient, but my patience is running out. You have 45 minutes to come get her, or I'm calling the police and having her arrested for trespassing. 45 minutes, old man. Don't keep me waiting. He hung up and turned to his friends, laughing. Did you hear that? The great Robert Hayes, reduced to picking up garbage. I stood in the doorway, silent. Tyler saw me and sneered. What are you looking at? Better start packing. Your daddy's coming to collect his useless baggage. I said nothing. I just looked at the clock. 45 minutes. Exactly 43 minutes later, I heard the sound of multiple engines outside. Not one car, a convoy. Tyler and Patricia rushed to the window, their faces shifting from confusion to shock to terror. A black Maybach pulled up first, followed by 2 Range Rovers and a large SUV. From the vehicles emerged a team of people in suits. Lawyers, security personnel, and finally, my father. He wasn't wearing the defeated expression of a ruined man. He was dressed impeccably, radiating power and authority. Behind him walked a team of lawyers I recognized from some of Seattle's most prestigious firms. Tyler's face went white. That's impossible. He's supposed to be bankrupt. My father walked through the front door like he owned the place. Which, technically, he was about to prove he did. Good evening, he said, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made everyone in the room freeze. I believe we have some business to discuss. How? Patricia stammered. The news said, your company. My company is doing excellently. Thank you for your concern. My father sat down in the living room, completely at ease. The rumors of my bankruptcy were greatly exaggerated. Deliberately so. Deliberately? Tyler's voice cracked. It was a test, Mr. Morrison. A test of character. I wanted to see what kind of man my daughter had married. My father's eyes turned to ice. You failed spectacularly. One of the lawyers stepped forward, placing a document on the coffee table. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to explain something to you once, so listen carefully. The property deed you're so proud of contains a clause that you clearly didn't read. Section 7, paragraph 3. Allow me to quote. This property is held in a revocable family trust. Any transfer of ownership requires the written consent of the trustee, Robert Hayes. Any transfer executed without such consent is null and void. Tyler grabbed the document, his eyes scanning frantically. That's not possible. My lawyer reviewed this. Your lawyer missed it. Or perhaps he was incompetent. Either way, the quitclaim deed my daughter allegedly signed is legally worthless. This property never left the trust. It was never yours. Patricia let out a strangled sound. You tricked us. No, my father said coldly. You tried to trick my daughter. I simply made sure you couldn't succeed. Then I stepped forward. It was my turn. There's more, I said, pulling out my phone. Over the past month, I've recorded every conversation where you discussed your plan to steal my property. I have you on tape admitting the quitclaim deed was meant to defraud me. I have Patricia on tape calling me dead weight and discussing how to get rid of me. And I have Tyler on tape coordinating with his lawyer to expedite the divorce specifically so he could sell the house before anyone caught on. I played a few choice clips. Tyler's voice, clear as day, saying, Once the deed is processed, we divorce her and sell the house. She won't see a penny. The color drained from his face completely. That's inadmissible. You recorded without consent. Actually, one of my father's lawyers interjected, Washington state is a two-party consent state, but the recordings were made in Miss Hayes' own home, where she had a reasonable expectation of being a party to conversations. More importantly, these recordings demonstrate clear fraud, which nullifies any claims you might have had to the property. We've already submitted them to the prosecutor's office. You're facing charges of attempted fraud, conspiracy, and possibly theft by deception. Tyler fell back onto the couch, his legs giving out. Patricia was crying, her makeup running down her face in black streaks. Please, Tyler begged, looking at me for the first time with something other than contempt. Madison, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Can't we work this out? I'll do anything. I looked at this man I had once loved. This man who had called my father to humiliate him, who had called me worthless, useless, dead weight. You had everything, Tyler, I said quietly. My love, my father's respect. A future most people can only dream of. And you threw it all away for greed. You weren't just trying to steal a house. You were trying to destroy me. I turned to my father. I want them out. Tonight. My father nodded to his security team. You heard her. Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Morrison, you have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings. Clothes, toiletries, personal documents only. Everything else stays. If you're not out by then, we'll have the police escort you. What followed was the most satisfying 30 minutes of my life. I watched as Tyler and Patricia scrambled to pack, throwing clothes into suitcases while security guards supervised their every move. Patricia tried to take a designer handbag I had bought her for Christmas. A guard stopped her. Personal belongings only, ma'am. Gifts from Miss Hayes remain with Miss Hayes. When they walked out the front door, Tyler turned to look at me one last time. There was no anger in his eyes anymore, just emptiness. The look of a man who had lost everything and knew he had no one to blame but himself. I really did love you once, he said quietly. In the beginning. No, you didn't, I replied. You loved what I represented. There's a difference. The heavy door closed behind them, and just like that, they were gone. That night, after all the lawyers and security had left, my father and I sat on the deck overlooking the water. The city lights sparkled in the distance, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the test, my father said. I know it was cruel. It was, I admitted, but it was also necessary. If I had known, I wouldn't have seen who he really was. What will you do now? I thought about it. The house, once a symbol of my failed marriage, now felt different. It was mine again. Truly mine. I'm going to renovate, I said finally. I'm an architect. It's what I do. I'm going to tear out everything that reminds me of him and rebuild it into something beautiful. Something that's completely mine. My father smiled. That sounds perfect. A few months later, I learned that Tyler had moved back to Ohio to live with a distant relative. His career was destroyed. No company wanted to hire someone facing fraud charges. Patricia had gone with him, broken and bitter. The charges were eventually reduced in exchange for a full admission of guilt and restitution, but the legal fees alone wiped out whatever savings they had. I didn't feel satisfaction at their downfall. I didn't feel much of anything about them anymore. They had simply become strangers. People I used to know. The house took a year to renovate. I designed every detail myself, turning it into a showcase of sustainable architecture. When it was featured in an architecture magazine, the article mentioned my fresh start after a difficult divorce. I smiled when I read that. It was the understatement of the century. I eventually met someone new, a fellow architect named David who I worked with on a community housing project. He wasn't rich. He wasn't connected. He was just kind and genuine, and he liked me for who I was, not whose daughter I was. When David proposed, my father took him aside for a private conversation. I never asked what was said, but when David came back, he was smiling. "Your dad is terrifying," he said. "But I think he likes me." "Did he threaten to test you?" David laughed. He said he wouldn't need to. He said he could tell I was different. "And are you?" He took my hands in his. "I hope so, because I plan to spend the rest of my life proving it." Our wedding was small, just family and close friends, held in the backyard of my renovated house. As I stood at the altar, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal, the pain, the moment I thought I had lost everything. But I also thought about what I had gained. Strength, wisdom, the knowledge that I could face the worst people had to offer and come out stronger. My father walked me down the aisle, and as he gave my hand to David, he whispered something in my ear. "I'm proud of you, Madison. Not because you won, because you never stopped fighting." That night, as David and I danced under strings of lights, I finally understood what real love looked like. It wasn't grand gestures or expensive gifts. It was standing beside someone when they had nothing. It was choosing them when walking away would be easier. Tyler had failed that test. David never would. And that made all the difference. If you're watching this and you're in a situation like mine, where someone is trying to use your trust against you, I want you to know something. You are not worthless. You are not dead weight. You are stronger than you know. Read every document before you sign it. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve to be treated with dignity. Because the people who try to break you down are the ones who are truly broken. And one day, they'll pay the price for their cruelty. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But eventually, the truth always comes out. And when it does, make sure you're standing tall enough to watch them fall.